appreciate it.
You're welcome.
It's been a while since I've seen you with the coronavirus and whatnot.
Yes.
Yeah, I see you got a nice beard growing
I'm trying to
in.
grow it out a little bit.
Yeah. I'm trying to really get, who I'm about out in social media.
Okay.
I'm 45 years old. I'm not really in the social media thing, but it's very clear there's people that are social media millionaires. There's people who can get their messages out in social media. And even if you take a look at the president, regardless of what you think of him, he feels that it's necessary to get onto Twitter so that he can get his side of the story out, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Well, I want to do the same, because a lot of a lawyer's job is kind of private and secret and trying to stay, making sure that they're under the cover of darkness, and I don't really want to do that. I want to let the public know what lawyers really do and what kind of moves they make in order to impact the lives of their clients. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
I used to be a person that was in business, and recently my social media team and marketing team said, I want to do a video where it's a get to know you. Spend a few minutes, tell the people who you are, and let them see the inside of who Darren Ritchie really is, right? And I said, well, I'm not that much of a self-promoter. In fact, even these videos has been a little bit uncomfortable for me. But I want to do it so that I can share with people, right? Because I really like to be impactful. When I was in business, specifically the car business, at the top of the world in terms of luxury cars, I had some great moments. I was able to impact people's lives that were employees that worked for me. And over a period of over 14 years, I had maybe 1,000 people directly reporting to me at some point, if you add them all together. And having them be able to go home and flourish and have a great family and be able to progressively grow their lives was very rewarding. But at the end of the day, when I laid my head on the cool side of the pillow, I was helping somebody buy a luxury car. It was very different than being an attorney. Now, I graduated in 2003 from law school quickly in 2.5 years, and most people do it in 3, so I was on an accelerated program. But I decided to go into business because I wanted to make real money. And as a lawyer, it was very difficult for me to see an opportunity for myself to do that at a big law firm and stair-stepping through salary increases over several years and being a partner and working my ass off and all those kinds of things. So I felt it would be best to work my ass off for business, make a lot of money, and get to a point where I could have my own law firm so I can impact people. And I gotta tell you, out of about 500 clients that I've served so far, you are top of mind in terms of impacting somebody's life.
Appreciate that.
And now, you can say impacting somebody's life very loosely and very casually, and not everybody understands what that means, but we're here today to talk about what that means. And that means that you found liberty and freedom because of the work that I did for you.
That's correct.
And to be clear, and I'm going to let you share, we're going to remain nameless, and hopefully you're not such a popular figure that people can just see you and say, hey, I know that guy, with that pocket square. He's looking sharp, and I know exactly who that is. But this was a federal case, and it was not your first federal case. And this was the Department of Justice, this was the FBI, this was the DEA. There's some major agencies here, and it involved also some law enforcement corruption as well. And truth be told, when I came and met you, I met you at the Metropolitan Detention Center in downtown Los Angeles. You remember that?
I remember that.
And you had an attorney already, didn't you?
Right.
And I think you had been working on that case for, somewhere around 9 months by the time that I met you.
It was actually, I think, like 90 days, somewhere around there.
Okay, 90 days, 9 months. But bottom line, even worse, that attorney who was helping you at the time came to you and said, Grant, I've worked your case so hard. How could he work your case hard for 90 days, now that we know that? And said, the best deal I can get you, even though you're facing a life consequence, which to be clear means spending life in prison, is that I'll get you a deal right now. You sign here today and you're going to be able to get out in 28 years.
Right.
You remember that?
I remember that.
You'll never forget that, will you?
Never.
And you remember when I walked in to come and meet you, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I changed your life and you changed mine. And so I just want you to share with the camera how that actually transpired.
Well, for some background for the viewers, when I was in custody, I've been through that process before. I was familiar a lot with what was going on in the system, so I kind of understood the dynamics involved in that. And when I met my first attorney, being a panel attorney, he is a private attorney but contracted through the government. The DOJ pays his check. I expected a lot from him, and I didn't receive, or I didn't see him reciprocating what he was supposed to be doing for my representation. But then I met somebody, it was one of your clients in custody, and he referred me to you, and he said, give it a shot. So I did. I reached out to you on email, Corlinks, and you responded, and you came very quickly. And I remember the first day I met you. You didn't come as you are today in a suit. You came very relaxed, plain clothes, I remember. And the moment I saw you and that smile, I felt very, very comfortable. Very comfortable from the very start. And you sat with me. You asked me more about me than the case.
Right.
You already knew about my indictment. You had read it.
Right.
You even read my first indictment, whatever you could see on there. And I remember you just, getting really familiar with me. And you asked me one important question. And that important question was probably the first time somebody actually really asked me something important in that case that really mattered to me was, did you really do this? Are you, and I told you what the position was. I says, I did what I did, but I only knew about the marijuana,
Right.
And it was really stressful for me at the time because this attorney, he was trying to shove a 28-year deal down my throat. He says, you're taking this. But from when I first met him, I told him we're going to trial because I'm not going to take responsibility for something that I did not intend to distribute.
And that's what a man does, right? He accepts responsibility for the things that he did do, right? You'll serve your time for your crime, but you'll also stiff arm responsibility for the things that you didn't do. And it's far too complicated to discuss in this particular video, but the federal sentencing scheme has different sentences for different drugs, whether or not it's Schedule 1 controlled substance, Schedule 3 controlled substance. If you have marijuana versus cocaine versus methamphetamine versus heroin, there's all different sentences for different types of drugs, even including cocaine base, which is actually different than cocaine, right? This particular federal drug conspiracy, which also implicated a law enforcement corruption scheme, had to deal with 3 different types of drugs. You believed that you voluntarily contributed to a scheme that dealt with one drug, the least offensive drug, which was marijuana, and not all others. The difference being 7 months and an entire lifetime behind bars. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a big difference. That's a disparity. That's one to make sure you take your time to understand and absolutely pound if necessary to get your freedom, right? And so you maintain your innocence with regard to those heavier drugs. But you were able to say, okay, look, I'll raise my hand. I did know that there were some issues with regard to the lower controlled substance, and that was marijuana. Well, we went into a session where it was very clear to me that the FBI transcript, upon which they spent millions of dollars in resources trying to get on an entire plot where you had FBI agents that was involved in a sting, FBI agents that was in your car, FBI spy planes flying between Las Vegas and Los Angeles to determine every single move of this conspiracy. It was very simple for me to understand that this transcript had 792 instances of something called UI. Do you remember what that means?
Yeah.
Let's see. Do you really? Unintelligible. It means that some letter or some word or some sentence that an FBI agent either spoke to you, spoke to a co-conspirator, or spoke to themselves was so unintelligible, meaning not understandable, not transcribable, that they literally couldn't put that in the transcript. This being the same transcript they wanted to put you away for life with. This being the same transcript they were going to take to a jury and say, hey, Grant knew everything. Look at this transcript. So while we were in that session, I contacted my office. I said, count the number of times that you see the words U-I, and it came out to 792 times. And I said, time out, stop. Obviously, this transcript is not accurate. Obviously, this transcript is not credible. If 792 instances showed UI, then how can you lend any credibility to any of the other statements? If you couldn't understand those, how could you understand these? And I remember the prosecutor at the time told me, well, it's selective knowledge, right? That you could say, and it's very interesting that he would only know certain things and not other things. And the things that he wouldn't know are the ones that would put him away for life, right? And I said, you may recall this. I said, I'll be in a car on a long road trip with my wife, and I'll say 8 different things. She understands none of which. But the 9th thing she understands. It's not selective. I also said, please try to introduce all of these other statements upon which you're trying to find you guilty, and state that those are accurate, but the other ones that are unintelligible are not. And we're talking about the FBI, the premier law enforcement agency in the world, who had a spy plane over this entire sting, couldn't figure out what their own agents were saying 792 times. Less than 24 hours later, I received a phone call. I remember exactly where I was. I was at my house in my living room and got the phone call where the prosecutor said, you know what, you stumped me. For the first time in my life, I didn't know what to say in terms of any counter argument. I have no opposition to it, and for that reason, I'm willing to offer your client time served. We're talking then about 7 months versus a lifetime in prison. And I remember when we were at your sentencing hearing and the judge said, whoa, there's a problem here I've never seen before. Do you remember what that problem was?
Yeah.
He said that the sentence was so low that it was actually less than the time that you served. You remember that?
I remember.
And we went through 15 minutes of trying to resolve that issue.
He asked me a question. Do you agree with this? And what could I say, you know?
Grant, even though I am trying to promote my firm, which is on a trajectory that I couldn't even believe 10 years ago, and I'm completely blessed with, and I believe in faith, I want to end this session with you. I want you to describe to the audience how I'm different, how I was able to make a difference in your life, and how you're living today differently than you would have otherwise.
Okay. Well, to start with, it's more of the relationship you have with an attorney. The thing with you that I enjoyed working with you is that you actually took my life into consideration and you heard me. And that's something that I've dealt with in the system many times, not just federally, but in the state, that attorneys don't listen. A lot of them are really robotic. It's some of them maybe lost their drive, some of them just are tired, I don't know. But with you, you were very energetic, you were in, focus, and you came in and you asked me questions that were the questions that I was waiting to be asked. I didn't have to tell you what I wanted, you already understood it. And the way you did it was just, I couldn't expect better. I wanted a certain result. I didn't expect what I got. I was prepared to do, some time. And the thing that made me feel more comfortable was that you actually voiced what I had to say. You were my advocate, and that's important in representation. You were able to speak what I wanted to say to parties that I couldn't speak for myself because I needed representation.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. I'm glad that you reached out to me via email, and I told you that while I may have changed your life, you changed mine. My entire mission is to make the truth reveal itself. And it's not easy, because circumstantially, a lot of evidence can come your way to make you think that absolutely, if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck and it walks like a duck, it must be a duck. But oftentimes in this criminal justice system, it is completely broken. And until you have an advocate like me to make sure to make some noise and really ask the right questions to determine whether or not the DNA of that duck is actually a duck or not, I am telling you, it makes a difference. It makes a difference in years, in decades, in a lifetime. And I am fortunate to be able to have impacted your life.
And I'm fortunate to have you represented me.
Thank you.
Thank you, Darren.